Hey everybody, it's Justin from Built, and this is the xTool P3. This is xTool's newest CO2 laser on the market. It is the successor to the P2S, and I love my P2S. It has been a workhorse for me here in the shop, but I'm a woodworker. I like using thick material, and I like making big stuff. And so a bigger, more powerful laser is always on my wish list, and that's what the P3 comes to the table with. What we're going to do in this video, we're first going to look at the quality of life enhancements. There's all new upgrades to this, so we want to check those out. We want to go over the ACS system. This is something new to just this machine, and it automates the entire setup process for you. It's really cool, so we're going to dive into that. And then we're going to make furniture. And that's what I'm going to do in my next videos on this as well, too. I'm going to make furniture, and I don't mean taking thin stuff and gluing it together. I want to use 3/4 inch material in here. I want to make cabinets. I want to make all sorts of stuff. So in this video, we are going to make a 6-foot tall, 3/4 inch, 19 millimeter thick, solid pine bookshelf. This bookshelf can be freestanding or it can be a built-in. We're going to make our own decorative moldings for this with the machine as well. And absolutely every single thing that we do with this is going to be made with the P3. You do not need a saw to complete this project. All you're going to need is some wood glue to kind of glue it all together at the end. So let's see what this machine can do today on Built. So this is a big machine, and it is going to be delivered via freight. Make sure that you specify to the freight company if you need any sort of special truck to bring it. They tried bringing it to my house in a semi-truck, and it just will not fit on my road, so I had to specify that I needed a 30-foot straight truck. They're also typically going to just want to leave it on your driveway, so I highly suggest tipping that driver, and then magically you might find yourself lucky like I was and get that laser placed inside my garage. Mine came with xTool's P3 cart. It is all metal construction, and you can see it has this tongue and groove system, which made it really, really easy to assemble. It fits together really nice, then all you have to do is just add a whole bunch of bolts to hold it together and add the wheels. Now, this machine is heavy. We actually tried picking this up, just my son Owen and I. We could not do it. We needed Ben and my wife, Christy, to get this up easy enough. So definitely take that into account if you're thinking that you're going to get this up a flight of stairs or something. It is pretty heavy duty. I do think it was mostly my wife's superhuman strength that got it up there. Flex those guns. On the side of the machine, we have an access hatch for a large CO2 cylinder, and this is specifically for the new fire suppression system that is built into the P3. Safety is always super important, and so I highly recommend anybody who's going to be using this machine to utilize the CO2 canister. Cleaning your mirror is important, and on the previous version I had to use a lot of screws to get the entire back hatch off, but here we just have this one plate that we can lift up and remove to expose our rear mirror. The machine now has this large 3-inch button slash display, and it's full color. It's pretty nice. And so what this does is it has a wheel that physically spins around it for you to be able to select things, but it is also a button. So when we're in the manual mode, we can select individual items. So let's say I wanted to do lift. I would just click the button, and then it's telling me that currently I'm at 30 millimeters, and I can change the height of this, and the machine will then raise and lower the height of the bed manually with me. To get out of this, I hold the button for 3 seconds, and it brings us back out again. There are a ton of light bars illuminating the entire bed from all directions. There are 4 cameras inside the machine. 2 of them are in the front left corner. There is one underneath the laser, and then there's one on the lid that when the lid is open, it's looking down on your material, and then when the lid is closed, it's looking in at the job itself, so you have a front-facing view while your engraving is going on. Here we have the Safety Pro IF2. This is xTool's newest air extraction fan, which is definitely made for the P3, but it can be utilized with any of xTool's machines. They actually include a little dongle that you can attach to those machines because it will automatically kick this on and off. Now, I have several air extraction systems already in my shop. I have a ducting system, which is hooked up to both my P2S, my F1 Ultra, and my F2 Ultra, all on one line. This 6-inch fan, I put my airspeed meter to it, and I got 2,717 feet per minute was the gauge that I put on here. I want to go ahead and kick this one on and show you how fast this one is going to be, and I'll do it just live right here. So this has dual fans inside of it, and not only can you do it automatic, but I can just go ahead and kick it on and turn it to full power at 4. We're going to see what number we get here. We're at 3,425 feet per minute. So that is awesome. So this is a very capable, powerful fan for you to be able to extract all of the smoke out of your unit and even run it to a pretty far distance, because I'm probably running about 15 feet of tubing to my machines from that one, and it is adequately extracting the air even when I have 2 machines running at the same time, so 2 blast gates open. This is going to be more than capable for the P3. With removing this magnetic cover, you have different lenses that you can actually place inside this machine with just 2 screws to mount them and unmount them. You have the small, medium, and large. The machine ships with the medium lens, and the small and large are aftermarket that you can purchase from xTool. They have different positioning in their heights, as well as differences in the actual glass of the lens themselves. The medium comes with the machine, which is the good, like, midway for good cutting and good precision work. But if you want to really get a smaller point of light, you use the small one, and that will give you a better, more high detail engraving. And if you want to cut through and really just remove a lot of material, you use the larger one. So we're going to be using this exclusively in this video because we're looking to cut through 3/4 inch material and remove a lot of material fast. Before we take a look at the ACS system in the P3, I wanted to show you the process that I would have to do for preparing a job inside my P2S. That way you can see the big difference here. When doing something like this inside, I would first take a look and see, do I need to lower my base plate on here based on this thickness? No, but I do need to remove my slats in order for this to fit. I'm now going to put my material in, but I'm at a weird height with this one, and I'm not doing this just because it's actually the piece of material I grabbed and it just happened to be this way. If I just place it on the bed at its highest position, it will not be tall enough. I lowered it a little too far and had to put it back again. So actually I found that I have to put a piece of 3/4 inch plywood underneath it, and now I'll be at the perfect height. If I tried to place it on the slats, it would be too high and it would hit the laser. Inside the software, I'm now going to take a panoramic photo. Okay, now that that's refreshed, I'm going to measure the thickness of my material. Okay, and now I'm actually going to do a close-up shot. That way I know exactly where the edges on this material are. And I can see that my edges are right here. I'll then design my project, but let's say I was doing a very large rectangle here and I want to make sure that it is fitting inside of the same height of my material. I'm going to have to continually move around my close-up shot in order to be able to get a full, accurate picture of where I'm putting everything. So by no means was that crazy, but, and I'm not lying, I just picked up this material because I was like, oh, I want something a little thicker, let's show it. And it just worked out that it was a weird height that isn't quite applicable without me putting some more material underneath it to make it a little bit taller. That is a normal thing depending on what you're doing. You have to change the height of this stuff, and you have to click some buttons. That's not a huge deal, but let's look at the ACS system now. Now, for the P3 with the ACS system, you can put in material that is up to 8.66 inches tall or 220 millimeters. That is incredibly tall. This camera up on the lid is looking at it. You'll see the color change to green. So when it says that it's green, it's ready for me to close the lid. I close the lid, And then what's going to happen is it's measuring the height of my material, raising the bed, and then it's coming back to take a more high definition photo of the material. You can see on the screen that it's actually made a box with a bullseye on my material. It realizes that this is what I've placed inside here. All right, so let's time this just based off of when I close the lid and start. A little just shy of 13 seconds there. So this did all the processes that we did over on the P2S, except incredibly fast and all automated. I didn't have to do anything. When I go to my laptop now, everything's ready for me to go. I don't have to move around stitching pictures. This did one giant, nice, high resolution for me of my workpiece so that I can just get working. So the full resolution workpiece picture, A+ for that, and then just having all these things be automatic is just so much faster. So also A+ for that too. You can turn it off with one button. So let's say you have some sort of process that you're doing that you do not want it to do this, no problem. You can turn it off and you can still do everything manually. So in order for us to make our bookshelf, we need to use a conveyor system. We're using 6-foot long material. I have my conveyor system from my P2S, and it is a good conveyor system. I have used it quite a lot, but it's manual. So I had to put this inside my machine every single time. I'd insert my material. It would only go up to 1/2 inch in thickness on my material, and then I'd have to crank the wheel down in order to clamp the material down so that it would adequately move it back and forth based on what it needed to do. Also, you need to store this. This is a big item that needs to live somewhere all the time. On the P3, we have the new feeder system, and this is a permanent install. So once we install this in a second, it's never coming out of my machine again. That's a big plus because now I don't have this big thing that I have to store. It has automated clamping, so when I put my 3/4 inch material in here, it will just automatically clamp it down, which is nice. Really, AI automated features in this machine are the name of the game with this upgrade. There are so many things between the ACS system, this, and much more that they're just trying to take all the little tedious stuff out and get you to working as fast as possible. So let's go ahead and install this. First, we're just removing the screws in the back and then removing the panel. Inside, we're taking off the magnetic metal panel without any screws. Removing 3 screws in the front reveals that it's actually a magnetic flap. I insert the conveyor unit and plug it in, and then screw it in from the other side. Using 2 screws, I have to install this roller bar, and this needs to come out when not using the conveyor system, which I really wish it could just be permanent. I'm sticking on the rubberized flap to keep smoke in. The install's complete, and now I'm inserting the 2 back rails and 2 front rails. These slide in very easy and will be what you're primarily adding and removing every time you want to use the conveyor. Okay, so that's installed. I would say from an implementation standpoint, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Way better than how it was implemented on the P2, P2S. I like that this front cover, the back cover can just fold up magnetically when you're not using it. That'll keep the light inside, obviously, making it a Class 1 again. When it's open, it is not technically a Class 1 during that time, and you should wear goggles. I also like that magnetically I can just place this back piece in here. It's going to protect, keep that area clean, keep the smoke from going out the back of the unit. So all those things are great. The only area where I knocked it a point was for that roller in the front that I need to remove with 2 screws when not in use, but also it's pretty small, so at least I don't have a giant thing that I have taking up a ton of space when not in use. Additionally, there are additional rails that you can get. I do feel, though, that just the front and back rails that mount on here is going to be sufficient for a lot of stuff. I measured from the front to the back, and it's 56 inches, so just shy of 5.5 feet of length. So you're going to have a lot of support on materials on here. You're probably going to be able to get a 7 or 8 foot board on here that's going to be able to be worked on without risking teeter-totter falling out there. But of course they do have these available that you can just add in the front and the back. Obviously they need some sort of support. They don't clamp on or anything, but they're there if you need them. Let's get to building this shelf. The first thing we need to do is find our settings for the two actions that we're going to do. Action number one, I want to be able to use shelf pegs. And so for this, I need to be able to go 10 millimeters deep into my material so that my peg will insert all the way. And I need that hole to be perfectly round at the diameter that I want it to be so that my pin stays in and it's not going to fall out. But it wasn't too snug for me that I couldn't ever put it in the first place. I am very particular about these. I've hated it when I've had cabinets in my kitchen or anywhere else and you can't get those pins in, or it's just too loose and they're falling out all over the place, and that makes a very unstable shelf. So for this, I was able to achieve this with a power of 80 and a speed of 45 on the engrave setting. I didn't have to lower the nozzle. I didn't have to use the cut setting. We got pretty deep in here, and it's a really nice, perfect circle for this. The other thing that we have to look at is cutting. And so you can see I've cut all the way through here. I actually cut the bottom of this piece of wood as well. For this, I had to go with a power of 90, speed of 4, and I lowered the nozzle by 2 millimeters. So let's talk about this a little bit. You typically do not want to go over 80% power often. You can for different projects, but if you're running it really high all the time, you're probably going to shorten the life of your laser. No matter the manufacturer, the make, you just want to keep it a little bit lower, not running at the top power level. So 90 is a little bit higher than I would like, but this is the thickest wood material you are going to be able to cut with this machine, this solid pine or like basswood. There will be some 3/4 inch solid woods you'll be able to cut. You won't be able to cut 3/4 inch plywood. The layers of glue in there act as an inhibitor, and so I've experimented with it. I only got about 80% through, and it caused a lot of burning. So at this particular time, that's not something you can cut through. You can cut through 1/2 inch plywood though, just not the 3/4 inch stuff. So this was the cleanest cut I could get. It is straight. I don't have char on my hand, so it's a good cut. If I were to slow it down any slower from 4, we really are running a higher risk of catching it on fire. So this is where I feel it should be. Now, because I lowered the nozzle down by 2 millimeters, getting it really close, and we're going to be performing a dirty action, which is cutting wood, really thick wood, there's going to be a lot of resin splatter, a lot of smoke. We really need to make sure that we monitor the machine and we clean it at least once, halfway through, because that nozzle is going to be getting dirty, and if it gets really dirty, we're not going to be able to cut through this material. It's going to affect our project. So make sure you're paying attention to that. So joinery is a big part of woodworking, and in some of my future videos, I'm going to be doing some projects that I've already been planning out that will do more higher end joinery, where you put two pieces of wood together. For this one, we're trying to make it simple, easy. I'm baby stepping my way in with this laser. So basically, when we're building this, our top and our bottom shelf are going to be structural. They help complete the box. And so we want the side and the shelf to interlock before we glue them so that we have more surface area. So basically what I've just done is a really easy puzzle piece here so that they can come together and they join at a nice right angle. Why I wanted to point this out is it's really important that you have a pair of calipers available to you. And it's not just for this project. You want this for all sorts of stuff. If you own a laser, you should own one of these. You can pick up a cheap pair at Harbor Freight if you want. And basically the reason for this is I really need to know the exact dimension of this wood. And this particular one is 18.6 millimeters. But if I were to measure this other one, which came from the same stack, it's the exact same wood. This one is 17.3. This piece is 19.2. So there is a wide variety of thicknesses, even though they should all be the same or very close. So when I cut my first test hole here, I was super loose, and I'm like, why? That is not a good joint. And so after I measured exactly, okay, now we're really good. I even had some that were too skinny because I measured other stuff over here. So I am sharing my file on here. Make sure that you cut your structural shelves from one piece of wood if possible, and you make sure you measure that thickness of the piece of wood and adjust for that inside the settings. Don't just use what I have in there, and I'm going to put a warning in there too. You need to make sure that you are measuring that shelf piece and adjusting the hole size accordingly. All right, let's load up the conveyor. Inside the software, I'm going to go to my mode and select Use Conveyor Feeder. We're now going to raise it up. So inside, just raised up to the height of the rollers here. I'm going to place my wood inside, and it must pass into the conveyor feeder that's in the back. It doesn't have to go super deep. And I want to make sure that I try and center it on both of my rails here. And I'm going to tell it to measure and clamp the material. Now that we've clamped the material, we're going to go over to feeder stitching. So it's going to take pictures of my material. And it's asking to make sure that the sensor cover is open. I have left it open. So it's feeding the material through, and it's taking pictures at each interval. You really need to make sure that you have enough space in the back of the machine so that your wood, as it goes through, does not hit anything else. All right, so we have a nice big image of our board. That's all 6 feet there, and so I'm going to just go ahead and lay out my project. I'm going to have my cuts at the top and the bottom for joining the boards together, and I'm also going to have all the dots for the shelf pins. All right, so we have it loaded. It's engraving right now. It's doing all of the pinholes, and then it's going to come back to do the cutting last. For safety purposes, you can never leave your laser unattended, but you can watch the cameras now on your laptop or your cell phone, and so I personally can now move to other parts of my shop and just have my laptop out. There's also a second angle that you can have on here too, which is really cool. Well, I have to blame myself for my goof here. I'm going to have to alter things to accommodate for this. But so it did a great job doing everything that I told it to do. When it did the stitching, I interpreted the bottom of the stitching picture to be the bottom of my wood. And I forgot that it's impossible for it to feed 100% that way. And that's because it's actually being supported by that roller that's inside. That is really what's supporting things, not my roller that's right here. And so when this moved forward, it didn't do the bottom 3 inches. So I'm gonna roll with it. The way I can roll with it is I'm gonna laser off the bottom 3 inches of this so that I can still make my shelf 100% with this machine. But it also means I'm gonna have to laser off 3 inches off of the top when I flip it around again as well. So instead of a 6 foot tall, I'm gonna be making a 5.5 foot tall bookcase. Definitely a me issue, not a machine issue. There are limitations to the machine, so it's good that you see my goof so that you understand that. Now, when you're making something with the conveyor, obviously if you're fully cutting it out, you're good. If you wanted to, or if you needed to, specifically make a 6 foot long bookcase in this case, you would need at least a 6.5 inch piece of wood so that you can laser it off at both ends like I'm gonna have to do, but end up with the correct length on there. I am super happy though, all of my holes are perfect. I tested out everything on there. I have tabs on here, so it did cut out the toe kick fine. I didn't have my 2 holes down here in the, they're in the file, but they weren't labeled to go right now. So I'm gonna run this one more time. I'm gonna get my 2 holes in there and we're gonna slice it across the bottom. And we're going to roll with it. That's just how it goes when you're learning how to use a machine, right? After I finished lasering both sides of this, I went ahead and used a scrap piece of wood to cut out the notches that I'm going to do with my shelves, just to ensure that I could dry fit it and make sure that it's accurate. After I checked that, I went ahead and cut it directly onto my larger shelves for us to assemble. Okay, we have our sides, top and bottom cut. They are very snug. As far as sitting in there, they're flush with the front, which is super important. That's the real reason why we would use a laser or a CNC or something, You're getting precise, accurate cuts so that things can interlock and work together really easily. Before I go ahead and glue this all together though, I highly recommend you put on some PPE, and we are going to sand everything down. For final assembly, you want to make sure that you're putting a good amount of wood glue on all of the surfaces that are going to be touching each other. I actually really like the light and the dark alternating right here. You could still wait until this dries and then go ahead and sand this down, and then it would all look one color, but I think I'm going to keep it that way. Some of my pieces, when being attached, were a little bit too tight, so I wanted to hammer it down. Make sure you grab a scrap piece of wood for when you're going to hit it down. That way you don't damage your workpiece. Okay, I'm making sure that I have this to size. This backer, you can use all sorts of materials for this. You can also have it cut for you at the big box store. So let's say you don't want to use a saw, you don't own one. You can just buy the material and take it right to them. They will cut it for you directly to size. Some things you could do here. You could either place some more weights on this while the glue dries, or you can use a hammer with some small tacks in here if you like, or if you have a nail gun like I do, you can just go ahead and tack this down. I'm attaching the small toe kick at the front with just some glue and clamps. So our bookshelf is basically done. You could stop here if you want to, but I'm going to continue on and do a face frame. So what a face frame is it's a thin piece of wood that acts like a picture frame. It basically goes around the perimeter and it hides things that you don't want to see. I have a teeny bit of a gap down here. It's going to hide that. I have a chip over here. It's going to hide that. It will hide, you know, if you're using plywood, that way you don't see that it's a plywood cabinet. It'll look like it's hardwood. We can also add some design elements too. So what we're going to do is we're going to feed this through the P3. I'm going to have it cut it to length, and I'm also going to have design elements engraved in on it. We'll continue that two-tone color look with that. But we do need to specially set up the P3 for this, and that's because this is such skinny material. It has to hit all the rollers inside the machine to actually carry this forward. There's also two sensors that the material has to pass through, one in the back and this one in the front. That way it knows where the start and the stop of the material is. Another thing that I need to address is on the roller in the front, my material is not sitting on those two large drums. And so what I need to do is take Allen keys, loosen those, and move them to the middle so that they're directly under my material. Afterwards, I'm going to give it a good sanding, and then of course vacuum it out too, because a lot of the sawdust gets stuck in there. I'm gluing down and then using a pin nailer to affix it, but again, you could just use weights and clamps if you don't have that type of thing. Okay, our bookshelf is done. We have our toe kick, we have a couple shelves, we have diamonds throughout here, but the big thing is it's 3/4 inch all the way through, even my face frame here. 3/4 inch from a laser, being able to cut it and deep engrave it. That's pretty cool. So this was me trying to push the limit and show you the maximum this could do. I tried to make something big, something that I was cutting really thick materials with, and I'm really excited to have it for woodworking here in the shop. My next few videos are really just going to be focused woodworking style. I think the next one I'm going to make a tool holder where I use dados and box joinery with the machine here. So stay tuned for that one. The machine itself, I mean, the quality of life improvements that they have made are always welcome. The ACS system that was added in here just streamlines my workflow. So that's really, really cool. There's a lot to like about this. But as always, I say just don't listen to me when you're trying to decide on what you should be purchasing. I get asked all the time, Justin, should I get a P3? Should I get an F2? Should I get a, you know, people are asking me all these things. I always tell everybody, look at what you're creating, and then you need to look at the machine that can best help you. If you're more like me and you make bigger stuff like this, you want bigger, powerful. Maybe you're doing a lot more jewelry and you want to go towards one of these. Or maybe it's just adding in personalization at a craft fair. Maybe you just need one of the small guys. It's all about what you need. Now, if you do need this, I do have an affiliate code down below. It gives me a little commission. I appreciate that. There's also the xTool trade-up program. Never forget that. If you already have a laser engraver from any brand, they will give you, on this one, I believe they'll give you $500 off. So make sure you check that one. I'll link that down below too. Discounts are good, so always make sure you take advantage of those. Speaking of discounts, they just told me that starting November 3rd, when this video comes out, they're going to be running their Black Friday sales, which are going to be the #1 sales for xTool for the entire year. You can save up to $1,500 depending on what package you get on the P3. So make sure you go check that out. I hope you got a lot of good content out of this. If you did, I hope you'll hit like and subscribe. That's what really helps me out, what helps me make this type of content for you. And as always, stay safe in the shop. I'll see you in the next one.